Snow slammed into the little frontier cabin, rattling the shutters and piling high against the door. Inside, the loudest sound in the world was a man trying to breathe. Abby Bennett woke to her father's wet, rattling cough. She threw off her blanket, set bare feet on the cold floor, and crossed the room in 4 quick steps, past the crooked table and the low stack of wood that was never enough, straight to the narrow bed where Eli Bennett fought the same battle he had been losing for 3 long years. "Pa," she said, sliding an arm behind his shoulders and lifting him up. "Come on now, just breathe." His whole body shook as the cough tore through him. When it eased, he slumped against her, light as a bundle of sticks. Abby could feel every rib through his thin nightshirt. "You should be sleeping, girl," he rasped. "You should be out riding fence and yelling at strays," she said, trying to smile. "But here we are." He tried to laugh and choked instead. Dark spots marked the pillow. They both saw them. Neither one said a word. There was nothing left to say. "What time is it, Abby?" he asked. "Near dawn," she answered. "And Hartley is coming today." Eli closed his eyes like the name hurt to hear. 287, he whispered. "That's what my whole life adds up to. A debt I can't pay and a daughter I can't keep safe." "You kept me safe plenty," Abby said. "Did I?" His hand found hers in the gray light. Bones, light as bird wings. "Your mama would have known what to do. Me, I just watched the ranch go, the horses go, everything go. And now I'm leaving you with nothing but snow and a man like Hartley circling." "Stop, Pa, please." Silence settled between them, heavy and cold. At last he spoke again. He asked again last week. "I heard him through the wall when you turned him down. What did you tell him this time?" "That I would rather freeze to death than warm his bed," Abby said. Eli's tired eyes met hers. "That's my girl, stubborn as your mama." His fingers tightened. "But Abby, after I'm gone, you're going to have to make hard choices. I know. Promise me one thing," he whispered. "Promise you won't marry Samuel Hartley. Not for this cabin, not for this land, not for any reason. There's darkness in that man. Promise me." Abby knelt beside the bed so they were eye to eye. "I promise," she said. "I will never marry Hartley." "Good," he breathed. Hoofbeats crunched through the snow before the sun came up. Abby saw Hartley through the frost-rimmed window. Black horse, fine coat, leather satchel full of trouble. Same smooth smile that never reached his eyes. She stepped outside before he could knock. Wind slapped her face and tugged her dark braid. "Morning, Miss Bennett," Samuel Hartley said, touching his hat. "Fine day." "State your business," Abby answered. He opened the satchel and held out a folded paper. 287 plus interest, due by the 15th. 12 days. The bank is not patient. "We will find the money," Abby said. Hartley gave a soft laugh that made her skin crawl. "How? You sold the horses, sold the cattle, sold everything worth selling." His eyes moved over her, slow and bold. "Almost everything." "You best watch yourself," Abby said, heat rising in her cheeks. "I am trying to help you," he said, stepping closer. "Marry me, and the debt disappears. Your father dies comfortable instead of in a charity cot. You keep a roof over your head. Folks stop calling you desperate. You become respectable." "Respectable," Abby repeated. The word tasted sour. "That's what you call it?" "I call it practical, and you could use a little practicality." Abby stepped in close enough to smell whiskey on his breath. "Here is practical for you, Mr. Hartley. I would rather freeze in a snowbank than share your bed." "Pride," he said, his voice turning cold. "That's all you have left. Pride in a dying father in a cabin that will be mine in 12 days anyway. It's not yours yet." "Not yet," he smiled, and something dark flickered in his eyes. "But it will be. And when you're standing out here with nothing, you'll remember this talk different." He mounted his glossy horse and rode away into the trees. Abby watched him vanish into the white woods, hands shaking with a rage she could not afford to feel. Inside, Eli called her name. "I heard him," he said when she came back. "Every word. I'm sorry, Pa." You did right, he said. Just remember what I told you. If I go, you find another way. Any other way but him. The day crawled by. Abby chopped wood until her hands went numb and her shoulders burned, just to give the fear somewhere to go. Inside, Eli slept and woke and coughed, each breath thinner than the last. 12 days. 12 days until the bank took the only roof they had left. 12 days until Hartley came back to watch. On the third night, the wind rose and snow came harder, a white curtain swallowing the world. Abby lay awake on her narrow pallet, listening to her father's rough breathing and the storm hammering the roof, wondering what kind of future could be waiting for her. Just before dawn, when the fire was only embers, she heard hoofbeats again, not Hartley's fast, showy rhythm, slow and steady, pushing through deep snow. Abby grabbed Eli's old rifle, eased the door open, and stepped onto the porch. Snow swirled in the lantern glow. A rider came out of the white, tall in the saddle, coat patched and iced over, horse shaggy and mountain bred. He stopped well short of the porch and raised one gloved hand. "Morning, Miss Bennett," he called, voice low and even. "Name's Luke Carter." "That's close enough," Abby said, keeping the rifle firm. "You can talk from there?" He nodded like he expected nothing else. "I rode down from the high country. I heard about you and your pa, the banknote," Hartley sniffing around. "I don't care for men like him. I came because I have a trade to offer." "You've been spying on us?" Abby said. "Listening," he answered. "Out here, news rides faster than any man. Folks talk about a sick rancher and his girl. I've seen Hartley ruin people before. I'm not here to add to it." He took a slow breath. "I run cattle in a hidden valley. Once the deep snows hit, the pass closes and you live with whoever you rode in with. My wife died 4 years ago, birthing our youngest. She left me with 3 daughters and a house that hasn't sounded right since." Abby felt that like a stone in her chest. "I've hired help," he went on. "Every one of them left. My girls watched each back right away. I need someone with steel in her spine near them." "And you think that's me?" Abby said. "I think a woman who tells Hartley she'd rather freeze than marry him has grit," Luke said. He reached into his coat and held out a folded paper. "This is a bank draft for $350, enough to pay your pa's note and leave you something. It's yours no matter what. In return, I ask you to marry me in name and come up to my valley. If you decide later to leave, you walk away. Money stays yours." Abby's feet were numb in her boots. Her whole life felt like it hung on one thin hook. "You wait there," she said. "I'll wake my father." Inside, Eli listened while Luke spoke, hat in hand. He told them about the valley, about Hannah, Maggie, and little June, and about the way the house had gone quiet after loss. When he finished, Eli looked at Abby. "What does your gut say?" "He's desperate," Abby said softly, "but not like Hartley." Eli nodded. "Chances don't come often." Abby swallowed. "All right, but I have terms." Luke agreed to each one without pause. A real doctor for her father. Letters she could send without being opened. A partnership, not ownership. Her own room, no touch unless she asked for it. "You have my word," Luke said. The preacher arrived before noon. The wedding took less than 10 minutes beside Eli's bed. Abby wore her mother's blue wool dress. Luke wore his patched coat. There was no kiss, only a small nod between them. By afternoon, Abby stood outside with her bundle. Luke waited with 2 horses. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she said. "But let's go anyway." They turned toward the mountains, leaving the only life Abby had ever known behind them in the snow. The trail climbed fast and did not let up. Snow lay deep on the ground, hiding rocks and roots that waited to turn a hoof. Abby kept her eyes on Willow's ears and Luke's broad back ahead of her. The world narrowed to breath, movement, and the next careful step. Wind cut at her face until it burned, then went numb. When she tried to speak, the words froze in her throat, so she saved her breath and rode. Luke spoke only when he had to. He warned her of ice, pointed out a safer line, told her when to lean forward or sit back. By midday, Abby's legs shook so badly she wondered if they would hold. By nightfall, she could not feel her toes. Snow kept falling steady and quiet, like the world meant to bury them. Near dark, Luke turned off the main trail into a shallow cut in the rock. Stone curved overhead enough to blunt the wind. He slid down from his bay and had a small fire going in minutes. Snow melted in a pot. Steam rose and wrapped them in a thin promise of warmth. "Sit," Luke said. "Eat what you can. Tomorrow is worse." "How much farther?" Abby asked. "Half a day," he said, watching the sky. "If it holds." It did not look like it would. Gray pressed low over the peaks. Abby sipped the hot water and felt it reach places inside her that had gone cold. "Tell me about the valley," she said. "I need to know what I'm riding into." Luke stared into the fire. "My pa found it running from his own bad choices." He followed a crack in the ridge and came through to grass deep as his waist. Springs came out of the rock, shelter enough to winter cattle when nowhere else could. He built it piece by piece. "How big now?" Abby asked. "Summer we run near 3,000 head. Winter a few hundred," Luke said. "Land runs wide." Abby paused, cup halfway to her mouth. "You're not poor." "Never said I was," he answered. "If I rode up in fine clothes talking big, would you have trusted me?" She knew the answer. "No." "I gave you what you could see," he said. "The rest comes later." Morning came mean and gray. The trail narrowed until faith was all that held it together. Abby's hands ached. Ice stung her cheeks. When she thought she could not go another step, Luke stopped on a ridge. "Look," he said. Below them lay a long valley cupped in mountains. Snow lay soft over open land. A creek cut through the center. A barn stood large and solid, with sheds and corrals near it. On a rise beyond, a house stood bigger than any Abby had seen. They rode down into a place that felt hidden from the world. Men paused in their work and watched. The front door opened and a woman with gray hair stepped out, shoulders straight and eyes sharp. "Mr. Carter," she called, "back sooner than I counted." "This is my wife, Abby Carter," Luke said. The woman raised a brow. "Well, come inside." Heat wrapped Abby as soon as the door closed. Fire burned in the hearth. Shelves of books lined a wall. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. Footsteps tapped on the stairs. A small girl hovered there, clutching a rag doll. "Papa," she whispered. Luke's face changed. "Hey there, Junebug." She flew into his arms. She peeked at Abby with wide eyes. "Is that her? The lady you went to get?" "This is Abby," Luke said. "She's going to live here." "Are you our new mama?" June asked. Abby shook her head gently. She said she was just Abby and hoped to be a friend. June studied her hard, then asked if Abby liked horses, cookies, and stories. Abby said yes to all three. June nodded, satisfied. Another girl stood halfway down the stairs, thin shoulders tight. Her eyes never left Abby. She asked if Abby was really going to stay, or if she would leave like the others. Abby said she was family now by law and by choice. The girl nodded once. A cool voice cut in from above. Hannah stood stiff and tall for 12, eyes too old for her face. She asked how much Luke had paid and whether it felt fair. Abby answered steady. Luke told Hannah to mind her manners, but Hannah did not look at him. She turned and ran, a door slamming upstairs. Silence settled. June slipped her hand into Abby's skirt. She whispered that Hannah cried at night. Abby thanked her for trusting her. That night, Abby sat alone by the fire in her new room. Through the wall came the small, broken sound of someone trying not to be heard. Abby stayed where she was and listened. The fever came on the third night. Ruth knocked hard, fear in her voice. Maggie lay burning and gasping. Abby moved without thinking. She asked for water, onions, honey. She set steam and wrapped poultices like her mother once had. June crouched in the corner, eyes wide. Abby sent her to wake Hannah. Maggie whispered for her mama. Abby sang low and steady. Hannah stood in the doorway, pale and shaking. Abby told her to come sit, to talk, to hold on. Maggie breathed her sister's name, and Hannah crossed the room and gathered her close. Luke came in with snow in his hair and fear plain on his face. Maggie spoke of a garden. The room tightened with it. Abby sent them all out. For 1 hour, Luke stood like a man on a cliff, then agreed. Alone, Abby fought. She changed poultices, kept steam rising, talked about spring and calves and laughter. Maggie asked if Abby would leave too. Abby said no. Promises could break, Maggie said. Abby said hers would not. Near dawn, the air shifted. Maggie cooled. Her breath eased. Abby laughed and cried at once. Luke came back with the girls. Abby told him Maggie would live. He gathered them all and made a sound Abby would never forget. Hannah looked at Abby and said she stayed. Spring pushed into the valley. Snow slid away. Maggie grew strong. Hannah brought books and questions instead of sharp words. June began to call Abby Mama by mistake. Luke stepped into the middle of their days instead of the edge. A letter came. Abby read that her father was gone. Luke held her while she broke. He said Eli had known she was safe and doing something that mattered. Later, Abby stood at the pasture edge. Hannah came to her and said she did not want Abby to go. Abby said she was staying. Hannah hugged her hard. Work stayed long, but the house felt full. One soft night, Luke took Abby up the hill to a small grave. He said he wanted to ask her proper. Abby said she chose him every day. He slid a ring on her finger. Laughter floated up from the yard below. Abby thought of snow at a cabin door and a promise kept. She was not surviving anymore. She was living. Summer settled deep into the hidden valley, warm and steady, like it meant to stay. Grass grew thick along the creek. Calves bawled in the mornings. The house rang with voices from dawn until night. Abby woke each day before the sun, not from fear anymore, but from habit and purpose. She moved through chores with Ruth, helped Luke with tallies, and sat with the girls over books and lessons by the window. Hannah changed in small ways first. She stopped watching Abby like someone waiting for a goodbye. She began asking questions instead of throwing sharp words. One evening, she brought Abby a book and asked her to explain a part she did not understand. Abby did, and they ended up laughing over the same line for different reasons. After that, Hannah came more often, carrying thoughts she did not know what to do with yet. Maggie followed Abby everywhere once she was strong again. She talked fast and laughed loud, like she was making up for the weeks she could not breathe right. She helped in the kitchen, helped with the chickens, helped with June, who copied everything Maggie did and half of what Abby did. June's songs filled the halls. She sang while she dressed, while she ate, while she fell asleep. Sometimes she called Abby Mama without noticing. Each time, Abby's chest tightened, then eased. Luke watched it all from a step closer than before. He no longer stayed at the edge of rooms. He helped with lessons and supper. He listened when the girls talked and answered when they asked. At night, he and Abby walked the yard and spoke about cattle and weather and the girls, and sometimes about nothing at all. When his hand found hers, it felt natural, like it had been waiting. One afternoon, a rider came through the pass with supplies and letters. Abby knew before she opened the envelope. Her hands shook anyway. Mrs. Miller wrote that Eli Bennett had died in his sleep 5 days after Abby rode away. He was buried beside his wife. His last words were of Abby. He said his girl was brave and that he was proud. The paper slipped from Abby's fingers. Her knees gave out. Luke caught her and held her while the room spun. She cried hard and loud, the kind of crying that comes from holding on too long. Luke did not tell her to be strong. He did not hurry her. He stayed. Later, Abby walked alone to the edge of the pasture. Thin green showed through old snow. The mountains stood quiet. Hannah came and stood beside her. She said she was sorry. Abby said she thought Hannah might be glad. One less reason for her to stay. Hannah snapped that it was not funny. She said she knew what it was to lose a parent, and she did not want Abby to go. Abby told her about the promises she had made. Hannah hugged her hard and said Abby was theirs now. The valley moved into a rhythm that felt like breathing. Days were long and full. Nights were soft. The girls laughed easy. Ruth watched it all with a knowing look and said nothing until, one morning, she handed Abby a small bundle. Inside was a quilt square, stitched neat and careful. "From Hannah," Ruth said. Abby found Maggie's stitching tucked into a corner and June's crooked shape sewn in bright thread. One evening, Luke asked Abby to walk with him up the low hill behind the house. Fireflies blinked in the grass. Stars came out slow and bright. He stopped by a small fenced plot with a simple stone. He told Abby about Lydia, about loving her, about thinking his heart was finished after she was gone. Abby listened and understood. Luke reached into his pocket and brought out a thin gold band, worn smooth. He said he wanted to ask her proper, not from duty or survival, but for love. He asked if she would keep choosing him. Abby felt the weight of the ring before it touched her finger. She said she chose him the day she climbed onto Willow. She chose him every morning in that noisy house. She loved him. She would keep choosing him as long as she breathed. He slid the ring on her finger. It fit like it had always belonged there. Below them, laughter rose from the yard, bright and sure. Abby thought of snow pounding a cabin door and a promise whispered in gray light. She thought of a girl who had ridden into the mountains with nothing but fear and grit. She had found a home, a family, and a love strong enough to carry them through any winter. She was not just surviving anymore. She was living.